25 hours of labor, 6 of those hours persistent back labor, 72 minutes of pushing, and naturally 0 hours of sleep. But that baby hit her chest and she immediately looked up at me and said, I cannot wait to do that again. Now, is that a perfect birth? That's for her to decide. But that feeling, that love for all that she had just done and all that had just happened, you can find the same with me inside of my birth course, Your Body, Your Birth. Created by a labor nurse who has seen it all and a mama who has done it 4 times, YBYB has everything you need to understand what your body's actually doing, how to work with what your body's trying to do, and how to make decisions inside of that process that you feel really good about. You can walk into your birth calm, excited, and informed about every intervention and choice along the way. And you can walk out of your birth saying, I cannot wait to do that again. To save 20% and get started today, head over to thelabormama.com/birth or use the link in your show notes and be sure to input the code podcast at checkout.
Motherhood is all-consuming.
Having babies, nursing, feeling the fear of loving someone that much.
And there's this baby on your chest and boom, your entire life has changed.
It's a privilege of being your child's safest space and watching your heart walk around outside of your body.
The truth is, I can be having the best time being a mum 1 minute, and then the next I'm questioning all my life choices.
I'm Lo Mansfield, your host of the Lo and Behold podcast, mama of 4 littles, former labor and postpartum RN, CLC, and your new best friend in the messy middle space of all the choices you are making in pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. If there is one thing I know after years of delivering babies at the bedside and then having and now raising those 4 of my own, it is that there is no such thing as a best way to do any of this. And we're leaning into that truth here. With a mix of real life and what the textbook says, expert insights, and practical applications, each week we're making our way towards stories that we participate in, stories that we are honest about, and stories that are ours. This is the Lo and Behold podcast.
All right, you guys, in today's episode, we are going to talk about baby sleep, which is something that surprised me so much when I became a parent, not because it was hard to navigate, because yes, I think that it is, but because it was so divisive. And certainly social media and the growth of platforms where we can all share what we're doing as parents probably has added to that. But I just did not realize that there were going to be such specific lines in the sand about how your baby sleeps and what you think about sleep and how you help them to sleep or how you don't support them to sleep. I just did not realize that there would be such a kind of you versus us mentality in a lot of the baby sleep spaces. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And as I've shared over the years about our own family and things that have worked and haven't, and figuring out who each of my kids are and what sleep looks like for us, and inside of my Beyond the Birth course, my postpartum newborn course, I share about sleep and foundational things that I believe about sleep and that have helped me. But in all of that, I'm always caveating it like, hey, not a baby sleep expert. So if that is what you want, you can definitely go find that from a lot of other people, but not here. I love my birth and postpartum world, but I'll leave sleep to the experts and leave that spiciness to the experts as well. My guest today, Andrea, is one of the people that I would say is an expert, and I love the way that she approaches baby sleep. So I asked her to come on. She has been educating in this space for like 8 to 9 years, supporting families, one-on-one consults, courses. She's an author, she's a teacher, she's a mom of 3, so she's been having babies in this season as well. And I just love the way she approaches all of this. I feel like she's even-keeled, level-headed, kind, generous with her words. She's funny. And I just like the way that I've always felt like when I have left her Instagram space or left, podcasts or things that I've listened to that have her on them, I've always felt like there was no judgment, that there was a, hey, here are some things I know and I want to support you and I want to help you and you can go use them the way that is best for your family. So that is what this conversation should feel like for you today. And I hope you do find some things you can grab and then take them forward and use them for you and for your baby. Andrea, thank you so much for being with me here today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and then we'll just get into our conversation.
Yeah, hi. So good to be here. I'm Andrea, and I am a mom of 3, and I've been a sleep consultant for as long as my first, how old he is. He's 8.5, which is just crazy. And I started sleep consulting basically because my baby was not sleeping. and I had just stopped working, and I was like, well, I'm not going to pay someone else to fix this if I could just easily, take a whole course and get certified and fix it myself. And then I just started helping people because I had the certification, and then people started being like, wow, like this is really changing my life. So I was like, oh, I guess it could be more than a hobby. And then I just started a whole
Mm.
business with it. And so I've just been helping moms with sleep for my firstborn's age.
Yeah. It feels so similar to a lot of the people I feel like who get into the birth world and they're like, I had a baby and then it made me realize I want to be a doula or I want to be a nurse or whatever. But I do think like so many of these parenting things we go through and then we realize there wasn't the help I wanted or there was something I needed and I couldn't find it. And I love this. So I'm just going to go do it myself. So that like my foray into all of this was so similar where it was kind of like, maybe I'll start talking about this online because I like it or I've learned all of this stuff. And I was a nurse, so I guess I like had the education before. And then it was like you said, and then people were listening and like wanted the help.
Right.
And so I thought, oh, I can keep doing this here online too. So it wasn't sounds like for you as well, not this, here's my business plan and this is what I'm gonna do, but more, oh, people are gonna listen to me. This is great.
Yeah.
I'd
Oh
love
my
to
God.
keep helping. So
Yeah, no, there was just like, I was like, okay, well, I guess, if people want help. I started on Instagram, and then it just kind of blew up, and then it was like this
yeah,
whole community, and it's insane. I mean, I'm not a huge social media person because I don't
yeah.
love I hate what it does to me mentally. And it's so hard
Hmm.
to be on your
For
phone
sure.
all the time and feeling that pressure to post, and like you post something and no one sees it. But it is, you find so many people. I made so many friends throughout because I helped them with their sleep, and then they
Yeah.
just are awesome people. Like people in like
Yeah.
Dubai,
Hmm.
everywhere.
That's my favorite part about all of it too. Sometimes people will recognize me here in Colorado and come up to me and they're like, I'm so sorry. I just like wanted to say hey and here's how
Oh,
you
here's
helped
how
or
we help.
whatever. And every time I'm like, thank you for saying hi because I like
Yeah.
it reminds me there are real people out there. And sometimes you think, oh, only 12 people saw my reel or whatever. But like, imagine 12 people standing in front of you saying, you literally changed my family's life or whatever. Like that happens. And it's really, really cool, I think, to remember that and have it kind of be brought back down to that small scale sometimes of like, it's not all about these viral numbers, but it's about the real people in Dubai or
Yeah.
wherever, like you said, that you really are helping. And because you've been in sleep and you've been exhausted. I know you have. It's not like you've had perfectly sleeping babies. Like you know what it means
No.
to have someone support you in these different seasons. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I always joke
so
around because my
I
first oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, please go ahead.
I was joking around that my first, second, and third I have 3 kids, so each of them had such different sleep issues, and, I didn't
Hmm.
sleep basically for each of their babyhoods because every single
Hmm.
one of them had different issues, but they were so extreme that it gave me such a huge repertoire. Like, I didn't know the term, low sleep needs, which I love to talk about now, or I didn't
Hmm.
know that reflux could
Hmm.
make you congested and not allow you to sleep well, and then with my daughter, I found so much about the gut health, and now it's like a huge part of my whole life. So I've been able
Hmm.
to help people with such different sleep things that you can't just Google like how much sleep does an 8-month-old need. It's like you need to figure out each baby individually.
That's it's funny that you're saying that because that's exactly where I was going to go. Is I know you have 3 kids and I have 4, and our first 3, it's kind of fun. They're like all the same ages, so we kind
Yeah.
of connected on social media when we were both pregnant with that third baby and kind of getting into more what we're doing here. But yeah, that idea of babies being really different, I actually thought we could talk about a little more or kind of how do you set up your parents for that idea of hey, there isn't this one size fits all, which I think we can all see now with this, divisiveness online about sleep that
Right.
clearly there's a lot of ways we can go. But you can look back now after 3 kids and you have this wisdom because you've raised and are getting 3 babies to sleep over the last 8 or 9 years. But what about that first time parent who's like, okay, it sounds like some of this is you learn by, I don't want to say like trial by fire, but you learn as you go. So how do we encourage these first time parents? Like, but here are some things that you can carry into this as you get ready. And then, yes, you're going to get wisdom along the way as well. But here's how I like to, like for you, here's how I like to kind of set up my new parents as they're
Yeah.
approaching this
Yeah.
sleep
So it
topic.
yeah, so it's a huge deal, especially because it's just so hard and so disheartening when you're like talking to someone and they say, yeah, my 2-week-old is sleeping all night. And you're like, mine's not. What's wrong with
Mm.
me? What's wrong with my
Right.
baby? And it can be really, I mean, I remember talking with my cousin. She had a kid like maybe a month before I did. And she was like, yeah, he she sleeps 3 naps a day and then 12 hours a night, and my kid was definitely not doing that, and I was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
like, what the heck are you doing right that I'm doing wrong?" And, actually
Uh-huh.
talking more, she was like, "I don't do anything. I just put her in her crib and she falls asleep." And I was like, "What the heck? That's what the
Yeah.
book says, and mine's not working." So what I like to do with parents is really get to know them and just
Mhm.
honestly, like, ask them as much as I can about their baby. If we're working one-on-one. My course is a little
Mhm.
bit less, obviously, like one-on-one, but it has a little bit of the same. But yeah, asking you to really get to know your child. What do they like? Do
Mm.
they like noise? Do they not like noise? Are they affected by, brightness very much? Are they not? And just really just get to know your baby, but also learn the physiology of sleep. And also
Mhm.
know that babies can only be awake for a certain amount of time before they get overtired, which means they're releasing cortisol, which means sleep is going to be harder. So I do believe
Mhm.
strongly in understanding sleep science. And I wasn't so intense about that with my first because it didn't matter as much. But as I learned more, my second child is so sensitive. And he's so sensitive in all the ways now that he's 6. He's like one of the most sensitive people I've ever met in my whole life, to be honest, which has been fun emotionally. But it made me really realize that, like, sleep science matters a lot to some babies, and
Mhm.
some babies just don't care. I have a friend whose
Yeah.
newborn was sleeping 14-hour nights and 4-hour naps, and that baby just needs a lot of sleep, and
Mhm.
so it doesn't matter that much what you provide because they're just gonna sleep. And then there's
Mhm.
others babies who don't. So yeah, just understanding the basic things, and I love to teach that, about circadian rhythms and about the adenosine buildup, which is the wake window. And I know a
Mhm.
lot of people are awake window haters because they're like, well, there's no way all 4-month-olds need to be awake for 2 hours. But the way to use wake windows is what matters. You have to know, okay, most 4-month-olds can only be awake for
Mhm.
2 hours. So for my 4-month-old, if I'm trying to figure him out, I'm going to keep him awake for 2 hours at the or I'm going to keep him awake for an hour 50. At the hour 50 mark, I'm going to try to get him to sleep and see what happens. If they
Mhm.
respond well and like fall asleep and stay asleep for longer than 30 minutes, awesome. I found his morning wake window. So it is a lot of trial by fire, but there
Yeah.
is a lot of, a blueprint that you can kind of follow and then just know that it's not going to be a given, but it's going to be
Mhm.
something you can kind of try. It's kind of like when you're feeding a child and you're like, well, I know they have to have protein, fat, and fiber, but if you give all kids like prunes, maybe no one's going to eat them. Right. And so you have
Mhm.
to find a different fiber or different vitamins that will work for your child. Or maybe that wasn't a great analogy, but that's where my brain was going.
It works. I get it. I'm tracking. I actually, there's like 6 different things that you, in that 3 minutes we were just talking or whatever, that I could zoom in on, but I want to come back to wake windows. But
Yeah.
one thing that I do think that I've heard a little bit more is this idea of temperament.
Hmm.
And you kind of spoke to this, right? Of like getting to know your baby, because I think that there is sometimes this idea, and maybe even just generationally in parenting in general, that like you do things one way for your kids and you get the one outcome. And like I was raised that way in a home where my
Right.
parents kind of was like, this is how we discipline and this is how we do this and this is the expectation. But I do kind of subscribe to this idea that like each of our kids are different, so we kind of have to figure out like what works best with them for sleep, what works best with them for discipline, what do they respond to when they're anxious, that these things are different. And I personally feel like that trickles into sleep even with babies, right? And so
Oh,
that the temperament thing
1,000%.
makes sense, that it does, it is so valuable to kind of dig into or try to figure out what their temperament is, because that will change how they respond to, let's call them like sleep interventions or things that you're kind of trying to
Oh,
do
yeah.
with them. So what would you
100%.
say for those parents if they're like, all right, how do I kind of figure out my kiddo's temperament so that I can then kind of apply that to this sleep science that I've learned or
Right.
that I'm learning?
Yeah. So unfortunately, it's like with all relationships, it's just time and effort and,
Yeah.
lots of bonding, lots of time together, lots of trying different things. For example, my first baby, we would put him in his crib once at night and he would just fall asleep. And he didn't
Mm-hmm.
like to be held for sleep, and he didn't like to be snuggled for sleep, and even now, he's not a very snuggly kid. I get, like,
Mm-hmm.
one bedtime hug, and he's like, "Alright, it's time for our bedtime hug," and he
Yeah.
loves it, but he's just not a touchy-feely person, which makes sense because I'm not a touchy-feely person. But my second kid, he just wanted to be held all the time, and I was like, "What is wrong with you?" And maybe it was because he had reflux as well, but even now, I mean, he's the snuggliest little six-year-old boy, and he loves snuggles and loves cuddles and like kisses and all of that, which is like I actually love it because it's him, but nobody else in
Yeah.
my life because
Yeah.
I'm not a touchy-feely person. But that definitely translated into all their sleep needs. And I see that with
Yeah.
parents a lot. So I'll ask them like, do they like being held? Do they like being cuddled? And sometimes they're like, wait, no, they don't. And I've been trying to rock them to sleep and they don't. And so for a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
kids, be like, hey, well, just try this. Just put them in their crib. When you know they're tired, you figure out their wake window
Mm-hmm.
and then walk away and see what happens. And they're like, what if they cry? I was like, well, just try it. Obviously, if they go into like hysterics and they're not comfortable, go back in and like see what you can do. But if you put them in and they go like and then they fall asleep, likely they were crying because they were trying to sleep. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
sleepy babies cry because they're so tired. And if you're not
Mm-hmm.
providing the way that they want to sleep by themselves perhaps, then they're just not going to sleep. So I've had a few clients that just like just put them in there and see what happens, and they're like, Andrea, you like, you're magic. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
we're just getting to know
Yeah.
your baby. They didn't want to be held to sleep.
Right.
But
Right.
honestly, if I hadn't had my first, I don't know if I would have ever come up with that, And so
Right.
there is so much, like when I go to a nutritionist, there's just so much they know because they've spent their whole life looking at different cases. So it is tricky to be like, I guess what I want to say is don't feel bad if you can't figure out your baby's temperament. I'm not saying you have to hire
Mm-hmm.
someone to help you do that, but if you're having a hard time, it's okay to reach out. It's okay to talk to other moms who've had kids, other parents who've had kids. I don't want to, other dads too.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you that like the older generations didn't do this as much. So often when
Mm-hmm.
we go to our moms, they're like, just let them cry. Or they're like, just hold them the whole time. You just need to hold them. It was interesting. I was talking to my grandma,
Right.
and my grandpa was a pediatrician. And so he told her what to do for everything. But he told her that you should not hold a baby unless you're nursing them. And so that's what
Mm-hmm.
she prescribed to. And that's what she told me to do. Never hold a baby unless you're
Mm-hmm.
feeding them, or they're going to be spoiled. Right. So
Right.
there is that hard thing. You can't always go to your mom or grandma, but you can find friends you can't find. And that's what social media has given us, right? Just another
Right.
idea, another way of doing.
Right. I feel like it's both the blessing and the curse of social media, though, because
Oh, 100%.
it's like the value of finding resources that help you realize, oh, like there are other ways to do this, or oh, there's like high sleep needs and low sleep needs, to bring back that term you brought up earlier. Like a lot of this, I think parents are discovering via social media accounts. The reverse of that, or the flip of that, is you can feel like there is one specific way that
Yeah.
is the right way to do sleep, and the other one is not okay, or it kind of puts you in a bad place, like in a bad space, or you're doing something that can harm your child. And so
Yeah.
you end up with this like, but my kid is like this, and this works, but this doesn't. So really, like, I just feel like so much of this is kind of like finding the right puzzle pieces for your baby. Cause I
Yeah.
don't know that like universally any of the systems work for every baby.
No.
I don't think they do. I think you would say they don't either. Because
No.
I'm like you, my first was actually very similar to your first. And we realized very quickly she does not want us to be holding her all night. Or when she woke up at night, she needed like maybe a, hey, I'm right here. And then we needed to leave her alone. She did not do well if we tried
Yeah.
to like cuddle
Right.
her and rock her back. It was to me, I thought this is the weirdest thing. Like, I'm not helping you if I come in
Yeah.
here. And then my second was the opposite, and very much like yours. She is still
Mm-hmm.
so cuddly. She finds me every morning and says, hey, you haven't given me my morning hug yet. Like she's been like that since the day she was
Right.
born. And so there was, I think, that wisdom that does come with having a baby, and then maybe another and another, where you can start to realize they are really different, which means the systems that may or may not work with one baby can be different with that second baby. And sometimes to go back to that initial thought of, I just don't know that social media, sometimes it can make you feel like you have to pick a lane and stick in that lane. And I just don't think our
Yeah.
babies actually allow for that when it comes to sleep, because they are not the same. So,
No. There's just so many different things that can be. Like, for example, for my second, I had to put him in there like 10, 15 minutes before his nap so he could calm down, soothe himself, and then fall asleep. And I don't mean soothe himself from crying, just like
yeah.
think. And he's a thinker. Now I see that. It's really cool to see your babies as like kids, and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
that's what you were doing.
Yeah.
Whereas my youngest, she doesn't like to be alone. She loves people. She's the most social kid I have. Like it's exhausting because I'm not that social. But she did not want to be put down for nap if it was more than 5 minutes before
Yeah.
her wake window. And if I did that,
Mhm.
she would just lose it. And it's funny because if I didn't know about wake windows, I would have thought, oh, like she's overtired, or I don't know. But then I realized that was her temperament. She didn't want to be in the crib unless she was
Mhm.
exhausted and tired enough
Mhm.
to sleep. And even now she's like that. She doesn't like to go to bed unless she's like about to fall asleep. And again, that's personality. And I think it's also like a lot of birth order. I don't know if you know much about birth order or care much about birth order. Some people ascribe to it, some people don't. but those personalities do come in. With the first, you're a little more anxious, a little more stressed, so those things might come up like prenatally as well. And the third
Yep.
is usually like, I'm gonna be with you guys because I'm gonna be
Yeah.
the one who says that I'm not left out. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
that fits into it as well. But I agree with you about
Mhm.
social media, and it can be really, really hard. What I tell people a lot is like, if you see something and it makes you feel bad about yourself, stop following that person. Even if it's me, if I say something and it doesn't work for you or
Yeah.
it feels weird, just block them. You don't have to receive so much input. And then if someone else like
Mhm.
already kind of they're saying you do you and here's some science, like, and that works for you, then only follow that person. Don't keep looking for more. But there is a
Mhm.
thing, like, maybe different people have different things that might help you. So if you're in a good headspace and you are looking for a specific answer, but I don't know, I just get so many people that come to me, they're like, I'm so stressed out because this other person said I can't hold them
Mhm.
for the nap and I don't want to ruin them. Am I
Mhm.
ruining them? And I'm like, no. I'll ask them something like, is holding them for a nap working for you? Does that
Yeah.
work for your family? Is that working for your schedule? Is that where you would like to be? And they're like, yeah. So like, well, then keep holding them.
Right.
There's nothing you can't
Right.
change when it stops working.
Yep. Yep. I was doing a podcast episode a while ago about some early breastfeeding stuff with an IBLC named Amber. And Amber and I were talking about this because it pertains to breastfeeding advice too. Because again,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
advice everywhere and it's also often contradicting. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, wait, am I hurting my supply or what? Like it's the
Mhm.
same thing. And she was just saying, when I have these moms come in feeling that way or going through that, I basically am saying, take what you want and leave the rest. Like there
Yeah.
is no rule that dictates that you have to take everything Andrea says as the truth or what you're going to apply or the opposite, right? Some other account. Like you can take something from you, Andrea, you can take something from your best friend, and you can take something from an account, another sleep account, and you can put those together and decide. And I just like that idea of reminding people that you don't have to like whole kit and caboodle take what one person says to you as your gospel or your Bible when it comes to sleep or anything else, that
Yeah.
you can put this together the way you want to. And so if you say something great, cool, hang on to that. And then if someone else says, cool, like apply that the way that feels right to you and that you're allowed to kind of be creative, kind of write your own playbook here with what you're gathering from different sources. So,
For sure. Yeah, it can be really, really hard, especially if you have, like postpartum
mhm,
anxiety and you just are sure you can't trust yourself.
mhm,
But gosh, yeah, just take what works for you until it doesn't work. And once it doesn't work, it won't work. I have a sleep rule
yeah,
because people will contact me in May. I'll have clients that are like, I am freaking out because my baby's not sleeping, nap's not working, my toddler's not working, and they're going to daycare in
yeah,
October and I need to fix it now. And I usually go like, okay, well, I can help you now if you want, but so much is going to
right.
change in the next 6 months. I
Yeah.
don't usually work on sleep stuff unless you need a change within the next 2 weeks. Because basically
Mhm.
everything
Okay.
you need to change, especially at baby stage, you can change it in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll be working with a client and we have, like a 2 week thing. And then they're like, well, can we keep working? Because I need to, we're traveling in 6 months. And I was like, contact me in 6 months. Let's save some of our dates because their sleep is going to be dramatically different in 6 months.
Mhm.
Especially when you look at the
Mhm.
difference between like a 1 month old and a 7 month old. A
Yeah.
1 month old can't
It's
be
crazy.
awake for longer than 45 minutes, whereas a 7 month old is shifting between 2 and 3 naps. They need about 2.5 hours. Some can do about 3 hours. Some are moving into the 2, 3, 4 schedule. So it's just so much you can change that can change.
Mhm.
And so if something is beyond 2 weeks, I usually tell people don't worry about it. When you're within two
Yeah.
weeks, then worry about it and try to change it. And I think that
Yeah.
helps people a lot. I think just having numbers as humans help us.
Yeah. I think the idea too of like recognizing that everything is temporary is valuable. One, because if you believe it, then you'll know like it's not going to be this way forever. And then two, understanding kind of going back to some myths or some things that have kind of continued to trickle through of that, like what you do today is not going to like impact your baby's sleep when they're 3.5. Like if you want to hold
Yeah.
your baby right now, hold your stinking baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. If you need him to sleep in a month, but right now you want to enjoy this month before you go back to work or whatever, like,
Yeah.
that's okay. You do not have to do something perfectly today because 6 months down the road, you need them taking a consistent 3 hour nap or whatever,
Exactly.
the goal might be. And I think that's easy to say. And again, like, now that I've raised some babies, and I have a 1 year right now, like we're still going through sleep stuff with her. So it's easy for me to say because I'm not in it, right? Or I'm not that
Right.
first baby where like, but I'm really tired and everyone says I'm going to sleep and I'm not
Right.
sleeping.
I'm
So,
not sleeping.
but if you
Yeah.
can like hang on to that in the midst, I think, of all of this, I do think it's really, really valuable.
Yeah, well, it's really important to remember that sleep deprivation really hits your brain. It really puts it as a deficit. They've done brain scans of, sleep deprived brains, and they're very similar to how your brain acts when it's traumatized, meaning you're
Mhm.
using more of your limbic system, more of your emotional side, less of your prefrontal cortex, less of your ability to make decisions rationally. So
Mhm.
I think remembering that is one of the most important things, because if you feel like you're the worst or you feel like you'll never figure out, one, you could be right. Maybe you don't have the brain capacity to figure it out by yourself right now. Like, contact somebody. And again, I don't mean you have to hire someone or pay anyone, talk to a neighborhood friend. Because if you feel like you can't think it through, you might not be able to. When I have a lot of sleep consultant friends, and I always would text them like, please help me. I don't know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I can't. Because also there's so much emotion and there's so much context in it that you can't escape from. So if you
Yeah.
feel, anxious about it, or like you cannot figure it out by yourself, please know that you might not be able to, and that's okay, by
Yeah.
yourself. Eventually you
Yeah.
will. I don't mean like you're in despair and you're going to be stuck there.
Forever.
I just mean like if you feel like you're a failure, you're not. You're just at a
Mhm.
disadvantage. You're also at a disadvantage from people who have babies who sleep, because if you
Mhm.
compare yourself to anybody else and you're like, why can't I figure this out? Why did they figure it out? No, just don't. Just stop. Because
Yeah.
every baby is just so, so different. And
Yeah.
everyone's postpartum is so, so different as well.
Yeah. Okay. So you've talked about sleep science, which I love. That's like what I glommed onto right away is, hey, I don't necessarily know how to get my baby to sleep, but I loved the physiology of sleep and going, okay, I recognize that sleep is valuable for my baby for these reasons. And that, wake windows, numbers, they did help me a little bit just to show me why I felt like sleep had value and I wanted to care about it, I guess. And then the temperament conversation, I think, is super valuable here too, of figuring out what your kiddo does and doesn't like. And then also recognizing that that will like directly play into how they will sleep or how you get them to sleep or how you comfort them in the middle of the night, things like that. So those
Yeah.
two things, I love how those go together. I thought we could kind of walk through some sleep like myths or isms, and
Yeah.
you can kind of just speak to them and you can drop in your knowledge or your numbers or whatever here too.
Sure.
But I think I have this Beyond the Birth is my postpartum newborn care course, and I have a section in there where I talk about sleep, and I'm not a sleep consultant. So really it's more like, hey, here's some things that I always process when I have a newborn baby and like think through
Awesome.
and
Yeah.
apply. So I wanted to throw some of them in front of you and just get your thoughts so that people can maybe pull what they like too and apply that as they're trying to maybe get their baby or toddler to sleep too. So the first one is just your ideas on that idea of sleep begets sleep, and how far do you go with that saying and how do you apply that?
Yeah. So I would change it. I wouldn't say sleep begets sleep, but I would say being well rested begets sleep. Because
Hmm.
if you try to get, for example, and this is the notion that not all babies need the same amount of sleep, which is a new concept for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't like to accept it.
Right.
If you have a high sleep needs baby, why would you accept that? Why would you accept that somebody's baby needs a lot
Hmm.
less sleep? It just doesn't work in your brain. It doesn't fit in there. So let's say your baby needs 5 hours of naps during the day so that they're not overtired and they're not creating extra adrenaline to
Hmm.
make it to bedtime. If that baby doesn't get the
Hmm.
5 hours they need, they're going to create that cortisol and that adrenaline, most likely, and not be able to sleep at night. So, yes, for that baby, the phrase sleep begets sleep would work. However, if your baby
Hmm.
only needs 2 hours of sleep during the day, which is a normal amount, a
Hmm.
normal differential, and you give them 5 hours of sleep because you believe sleep begets sleep, they're not going to have enough sleep pressure to stay asleep the whole night. And
Hmm.
so, if you force a baby to have more sleep than they need during the day, or if you allow them in some cases to have more sleep than they can handle, that sleep is going to be eaten up at night. And then that's where you have split nights, which means a baby's awake for an hour or two in the middle of the night. Or you have super early wake ups, which means baby's up at 4 or 5 a.m. Or you have what are called false starts, which means you put them in at 7 and you're like,
Hmm.
okay, good night. And they're up at 8 and they don't want to go back to sleep till 10. So
Hmm.
I would promote the idea of well rested, sufficient sleep promotes better night sleep,
Hmm.
even though it's a little more
Depending
wordy.
on your baby and their needs.
And their
But
environment
it's
and what's going
true.
on. Yeah.
It's true. People say that. And I think it's this blanket thing of like, get your baby to sleep and they'll sleep more. And you're like, okay, I
Mhm.
just need him to sleep. I need him to sleep. And then you have these
Mhm.
parents like crying because their baby takes 45-minute nap. And it's like, maybe that's all they need.
Yeah.
And then they're sleeping 12 hours at night. So isn't that great? Like they don't have to take a 2-hour nap. But I think people latch on like 2-hour nap and a 2-hour nap and
Yep.
a 12-hour night.
Mhm.
And it's like that might not create, like you're talking, these things like that might not create this need for sleep at night or whatever. And so, I mean, that's perfect. I feel similarly. I've learned probably trial by fire more than anything on that one. But I do think that that phrase is lacking. Like it needs to be longer and less easy to say
A few more
because it
asterisks.
is that's not enough. Yeah, we need some more words. Okay, that was perfect. What about the idea of never waking a sleeping baby?
Yeah, so that one's gonna go along with this with the first one. If you have a baby who, they're
Yeah.
easy sleepers and they'll show you how much sleep they need and they'll do fine, yeah, let them sleep. Never wake them up. But if you're
Mhm.
unfortunate, I do say unfortunate because I think it's harder to parent a low sleep needs baby, and you
Yeah.
have to wake them up, otherwise they don't sleep at night. Definitely wake up that baby. I mean, my 2-year
Mhm.
old, her last naps, she dropped her nap around 2, but the last few months before she turned 2, she could only sleep 8 minutes, and people don't believe me. People are like, "You what the heck are you doing?" But if she slept longer than 8 minutes, she was up all night. And what I mean by all night, she'd be up from, like, 1 to 4, or she'd be up every hour, and she'd be so exhausted, and she just didn't have enough sleep pressure to sleep through the night. And I know it sounds
Mhm.
insane. Even now saying it, I'd be like, "I don't believe myself." But that was, 3 years ago,
It
and I've
kind of
separated
does.
myself from that. It does sound, and I've had
Yeah.
a lot of clients where we've had to come up with crazy schedules like that because their babies just simply don't need that much sleep.
Mhm.
So, and then there's other people who decide, like, no,
Mhm.
my kid's gonna have a long nap, but then they're up till 1 a.m. I've had clients in California where it's illegal
Mhm.
for daycares to wake up babies. And so for my low sleep needs
Really?
clients, that's really hard because they're like, please wake them up. Because if you don't wake them up, then they're up all night. And so I
Mhm.
have someone who I worked with for her first, second, and third, and it was the same thing. And I think her second was the most low sleep. And so the daycare would not wake her up, and she was up till 12, 1 a.m. every night. She would sleep 1 to 6, and then the daycare would let her sleep for 2 hours, and they would not wake her up. So, again, if your baby's a
Yeah.
good sleeper and letting them sleep works, never wake them up. If you need to wake them up
Yeah.
because you have a doctor's appointment, because you have to go somewhere, you got to pick up the other kids, you have to do something important, or because if you don't wake them up, they're going to be up all night, then wake them up.
Yeah. I feel like that I mean, the sleep combo probably a lot actually trickles into feeding too, especially in the first year or those first months, like how breastfeeding supply and all that. Because I feel like this never wake a sleeping baby thing for me. I have been someone who would wake my sleeping baby from naps, typically naps. Well, mornings too, if I had to, I guess. But for me, it was also like feeding them really regularly, wanting to get more calories during the day, like working towards that idea of like, I want to nurse you more during the day. And maybe we're shifting your caloric intake as well to more
Right.
daytime hours than nighttime hours. So I felt like I was also lining those two up in regards to this specific don't wake a sleeping baby type thing. Cause I'm like, well,
Right.
I'd rather feed them every 2.5 hours or whatever. We're talking about more little babies at this point. And then, do their wake window or whatever and get them back to sleep so I can get maybe an extra feed or two in during the day if they're going to take that. And maybe this didn't really like work from my kids if we're being honest, but maybe, that'll help them sleep longer eventually at night because they're not
Right.
wanting a feed at night that maybe we could like fill them up during
Fix.
the day. So that one for me was like a feeding kind of choice as well
Mhm. Yep.
as figuring out the sleep needs thing too.
Right. Yeah, it's just
Oh,
multifaceted.
okay. That is perfect. The next one, you've kind of already spoke to this, but maybe you can just clarify one more time. The idea of keeping baby up to tire them out or hey, they're not tired yet. This is probably where wake windows come in. And then that cortisol that you kind of kept mentioning. So maybe speak to that a little bit if you could about how those things go together.
Yeah, so this again falls down to the physiology of sleep. If you do
Hmm.
exercise, if you tire your brain, if you use your brain muscles and your physical, like your body muscles, your brain is gonna make more adenosine, or what's it called? It's just gonna be more tired, right? And you're gonna be able to sleep better. So, for example, if you have a baby who's just there looking into space for an hour, and then you try to get him to sleep, even if their like sleep cycle is there, they might not be able to sleep. Right? I've had quite
Hmm.
a few clients where they had the schedule perfectly, and they're like, I don't know what's happening, but then they tell me, they're in the car all day because we're dropping off
Right.
different siblings and doing different things, and this baby is not stimulated. And so what I what I tell them to do is go outside with baby, like walk to the school instead of driving in the car, like talk more with baby, do
Mhm.
more baby gymnastics, baby massage, and then same exact schedule and baby sleeps better. Funny because I was talking to my friend with a teenager and she was like, my teenager stopped sleeping. I can't figure out why. You're doing so many things. And I was thinking about it. And I was like, are you doing this? This? Yes. And then the next day I was like, wait, didn't basketball season just finish? She was like, yeah. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, well, she was sleeping because she had enough activity. Now she doesn't. You're like, oh my
Right.
gosh, you're right. She's just been reading all day now. And it's
Yeah.
the same with adults. I started my master's and all my sleep problems went away because my brain had not been
Mm.
working as hard as it is now. And
Being
now I
yeah.
sleep really well. So yeah, there is a lot of truth to definitely tire them out. And then also again, different babies, right? Some need to be more tired out than others. Some tire out easily. Some have more stamina. Within my three, all three of mine need so little sleep. And like we need to go to the pool every day for 2 hours if I want my youngest to sleep because she's the lowest sleep needs. So yeah, again, trial by fire, again, try and do things. But if your baby is needing, the typical wake windows and they're not even tired, and you've tried everything, maybe try more stimulation, especially for, more advanced kids. That's why also they say, like, there's this thing people say that smarter babies sleep less or have a harder time sleeping. And it could be two things. One, they're thinking more, and two, they're not stimulated enough to be tired enough to sleep, which is
Mhm.
the case with a lot of babies I work with. But I work with their parents, but
Yeah. Yeah. Both of them, the family. It's about the family, really. Within that idea of tiring them out, how do you speak to the reverse, though, of like, if you keep them up too long, this cortisol is they're gonna have more cortisol in the body. And so how do you speak to
right.
kind of that balance of that's like I've heard that wake windows specifically have no science behind them, but I love wake windows just as this kind of anchor to think about and float around and work with.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of tuck that in with, hey, we want your baby to have active time and we do want to, I'm
Yeah.
going to say, quote unquote, like wear them out a little bit, make them use
Mhm.
these little tiny bodies. But also, there's kind of an upper limit or threshold, or you could run in to the idea that you've gone too far and now they're way overtired.
Yeah. So there's two different things I'm going to mention. I'm going to mention overtired
Mm-hmm,
and overstimulated, which are actually very
mm-hmm,
different. Overstimulated is like, yes, stimulate them and give them enough things to do, but also give them a little time to process. I do like to recommend for more easily stimulated kids a 5-minute break before a nap routine before the nap,
mm-hmm.
right? So you have to again learn how easily is your kid overstimulated. If they're looking like with their eyes wide open and they can't focus, or if they're looking away from people, that is a sign they're overstimulated. And that's different from overtired because a kid could be overstimulated within the right wake window, but
Mm-hmm.
overtired happens when they've exceeded their wake window. Like, because if their body is ready to sleep and they're not sleeping, their body's like, oh, something's wrong. We need to stay awake. Here's some adrenaline and cortisol to keep you awake. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
what it means by overtired. Different from overly tired, which means like you went to the pool all day, you're exhausted, you're going to pass out because you
Right.
haven't exceeded that window. Now, I know people say there's no science to wake windows, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
specific doctor I've actually had on my podcast, and he said there's no science for them, and that's fine. I don't need science because I know what works and doesn't, and it worked for me and hundreds of people have worked with me, so I'll keep suggesting it. But I think people
Yeah.
say there's no science because you can't say, like, without a doubt all 4-month-olds need to be up for 2 weeks, 2 hours.
Right. Right.
But there is enough science that says, adults, you need to sleep for 8 hours. And what does that mean? That after 14 hours your body is going to be complaining. Wait, is that 14? No. What's 24 minus 8?
16.
After 16 hours,
16.
sorry.
Don't make
my
me do math right now.
my number brain stopped working my part. Whatever. After 16 hours, if you stay past 16 hours, your body's shooting cortisol, it's shooting adrenaline.
Mm.
So that's my proof that I don't need. I mean, that's what I use as proof.
Yeah.
Like, yes, there is a limit to your body, to the amount of time that you can be awake, and that's what I call the wake window. I do
Mm-hmm.
100% agree that it's not going to be the same number for everybody. I know personally I
Yeah.
only need about 7 hours of sleep. So my number is, what is that, 17? So my number is 17. So if I pass 17 hours, and I'm like my second, I don't like to be overtired. I get super angry. If I pass
Mm-hmm.
that 17-hour mark, I'm done for. Sometimes 16 and a half, depending on how tired I am. And so that's the case
Yeah.
with babies too. There is a special number that they can hold on to before shooting adrenaline and cortisol. And if they get to that point, then it's really hard to sleep for some babies.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to
Right.
say that second part because some babies are not very sensitive to cortisol. Some babies are not overly sensitive to being overtired and adrenaline, or their body doesn't respond that intensely. And so those are the parents that are like, just keep them up. They're fine. They'll sleep in tomorrow because they don't know. They don't know what it's
Yeah.
like to deal with a baby who has an excess of adrenaline and cortisol at 10 p.m. just screaming their
Yeah.
little hearts out. Again,
Mm-hmm.
it comes back to
Mm-hmm.
temperament and how sensitive they are. And yeah, it can be really difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I really feel like a lot of this does keep coming back to temperament and the
Oh,
physiology of sleep,
100%.
right? And so then it's like
Yeah.
putting all that together
Yeah.
to then figure out how to best serve your baby and help them and support them in this. Like if you don't have those foundations to kind of stand on, then I think you're like, well, I'll do the wake windows and I'm going to read about false starts and all that. But it's like, but what are you trying to do? Like, what are you
Right.
trying to do and with who, which would be your baby, but like, what are they like? Because if you're like,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this info about false starts at baby, I'm like, yes, but have you first figured out their temperament, right? Or have you first figured out their sleep needs based on like science and high and low sleeping? So I do think sometimes we
Yeah.
kind of can skip some of the foundational stuff because you're like, oh, I'll just start applying the rules.
Yeah.
But the rules might not make sense until you understand who you're applying them to and why they matter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and then, I don't know if you know this, but I'm doing my master's to be a therapist, to be a marriage and family therapist. And so much more is coming
Okay.
into like the signs of trauma or like signs of birth trauma, and those things do come into play as well. And if they have some
Mm,
sort of trauma, like obviously nobody wants their baby to have trauma, but some if you had a hard birth or if you had a
yeah.
hard like pregnancy or if you had anxiety and depression, that can also affect how your baby responds to certain interventions and to certain like excessive cortisol.
Yeah.
So all of that comes into play. It's just so it's
Hmm.
there's so much that goes into it. And it's not
Hmm.
just, oh, look
Oh,
at this chart of wake windows and that's going to work. But for some people,
right.
it will.
Right. Right. I think, yes. And I think going back, you keep saying it for some babies. I'll call them a little unicorn baby, but some of the
Yeah,
stuff just is really easy and does this work. But I think that's not the majority of what is going to go on for most of us with our kiddos. And so that's why we're going to need to probably dig a little deeper. And,
yeah,
the Instagram post that's like wake windows for an 8-month old might not be enough. It probably won't be enough for a lot of babies.
right.
You just mentioned that you're doing family marital counseling and therapy. And actually, that's one last question I wanted to ask you about related to the family, because sleep really, you say, oh, I work with parents, or maybe you're working with mom more, but really it is about the family. How do you navigate when the parents, if there are two parents, don't necessarily agree with how to approach sleep, or maybe one of them feels like I'm pretty alone in this, so how do I do this, but I'm tired and I need support? What do you do in that
Yeah.
situation, because this is a family thing for most of us?
Oh gosh, yeah. It's that's funny because a lot of these consults with couples are what led me to be like, oh, I can help couples.
Mm,
I would
yeah,
love to,
couples therapy.
actually know what I'm doing when I'm talking to couples and giving them, advice. A lot of it, again, I believe strongly in relationships. And so a lot of it is in getting to know people, getting to know them like, why aren't you helping at night? What do you think she needs? And very often sleep gets better when dad does more if the case was that mom was doing everything. Sometimes a
Hmm.
solution to mom's postpartum depression is to sleep more. And so dad can give a bottle. So it's a lot about honestly just talking to each couple, doing a little bit of kind of
Yeah.
motivational interviewing. I don't know if you know about that way of about that. Yeah, but just talk to them like, what can you do? Do you think you're doing
Hmm.
the most, or like how are you doing? Why are you not helping more? Or you feel like
Hmm.
you're valued? Do you not? So it is kind of a case by case place, but in general, it is a lot about talking. And a lot of dads don't realize how much mom is going through. If mom is just taking care of everything at night, dad just has no idea that
Hmm.
baby was up 3 to 4 times a night. Dads can sleep through babies crying. Moms, in general,
Hmm.
don't have that capability. Our brain is connected and more attuned to that. So a lot more talking.
Yeah.
Sometimes dads just need to set alarms because they will not wake up to the crying baby. But yeah,
Hmm.
again, it's physiology, like learning what's happening and who's going to do what and talking about things. Because a lot of parents don't talk about this before baby's born. They don't realize
Yeah.
what goes into it. I didn't realize you had to change diapers in the middle of the night. I think it was like 6 months before I got over that and stopped talking to everyone about it. Like, why didn't anyone tell me we're going to have to change diapers? But, the middle of the night can also be a really beautiful bonding moment with your spouse.
Yeah.
And so you just have to talk about it. So that's a lot of what
Yeah.
what I would do before I started my master's. And these couple
Yeah.
conversations would just talk and talk and talk and be like, "Oh, we just talked a lot about you guys as a couple. Like, let's start talking about baby sleep." But
About the
in
baby.
many
Yeah.
but many ways that was the key factor to starting to actually fix
Yeah.
baby sleep. I don't know if I answered your
Yeah.
question, but
No, that's perfect. In that postpartum newborn course I mentioned, I have this section about the pre-baby prep for the couple. And we had friends tell Kel and I this when we were pregnant with our first, and they'd had one and we were pregnant together. They with their second, I with her first. And they said, hey, you guys need to sit down and you need to have the conversation that's really specific about if baby's crying at 1 a.m., who's stepping up? And if
yeah,
baby's diaper needs to be changed at 3 a.m., who's stepping up? And obviously, we were brand new. We didn't know fully what was coming for us, but they were like, talk about these things more specifically before they're ever here and not just like, oh, we're going to, figure it out how it goes, or we'll see how we're feeling or how the baby sleeps. Like, get some conversation happening between the
yeah,
two of you so you
yeah,
can at least see that kind of basic ideology in each other of how you maybe hope sleep would go, or how you maybe think that you're going to have to help at night, or with whatever it is. And we loved that. And we tried to sit down and talk about some specifics, without having had a baby and not fully knowing what was coming, but
right,
trying to talk through some of those things to kind of, and I feel like it helped me with Kelvin figure out maybe places where he wasn't going to shine. Not that I
Mhm.
wanted to like preemptively just decide you're going to be really bad at XYZ. I don't think we should do that to each other. But it was, we could
yeah,
start to see like these are things that he's excited about and lighting up about. And these are things where I can tell, okay, this probably isn't going to be his best asset to parenthood or whatever. And how will we, navigate where one of us is really good or into something and the other one isn't, and what does it look like to share
yeah,
that, or do we separate it? And so I do think if we could get more people very specifically having some of these conversations
oh
before the
yeah.
baby is ever here, it would be yeah, so valuable for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. And even having those conversations and like mentioning that, this doesn't have to be, this is just what we are planning on. But even just
Yeah.
that gives each person accountability. And these conversations are important to have also with your children when you're going to have an extra baby and just like, what are you going to be
Hmm.
doing when I'm,
Hmm.
putting baby down for a nap? If your toddler's super young, you might not, but for a 5 or 6 year old, practicing
Yeah.
alone time or quiet time because sometimes mommy just needs to feed a sleepy baby. So yeah, these
Hmm.
conversations are
Hmm.
great, preemptive conversations before a baby, but they're not too late to have. I remember one of my
No.
college best friends reached out and and I gave him a newborn consultation. And it was so sweet to see because he was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And she's just miserable and I don't, recognize
Yeah.
her anymore. And it was just sleep. And so that's when I was like, all right,
Yeah.
she's going to sleep from 10 to 2. You're going
Yeah.
to feed baby in that time. And just something little like that. Or I was like, what can you guys do? Obviously, I didn't tell him what to do.
Hmm.
But that helped him out
Yeah.
so much. And just he wanted to feel like he was doing something and he wanted to know that he could do something, but he didn't know what it was because they'd never like explored it.
Hmm. Hmm. I love that. I think so often, well, you're doing marriage and family counseling, so you already know all this, but like we're told communicate, communicate, communicate. And we're like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And then really that could be the answer to so many problems, but we have the
It
hardest time
really is, yeah.
actually doing the communicating. So here
Yep.
you go, guys, communicate. That will help baby sleep. That's what we're
That's it,
saying.
that's all you need.
But it's kind of true.
Yeah.
Okay, Andrea, this was great. I told you when we started, we weren't going to lay out some blueprint for everyone to say, great, this is what I'm going to do. But I wanted to give people like talking points and digging in points for approaching
Yeah.
sleep. And so maybe you can walk away right now and you can say, okay, sleep physiology, sleep science, I want to lean in there, or let me figure that out, temperament a little bit more. And so I want you to
Yeah.
share where people can find you. And then if you do have like books you love, I know you have some of your own resources, consults, tell us some of that stuff that can maybe support parents in some of this stuff we just kind of laid out for
Yeah,
them.
yeah. So I've scaled back a bit because I am doing my marriage and family therapy stuff, but I still do one-on-one
Hmm.
consults. I do something called troubleshooting consults where we just meet for half an hour and I just ask you a bunch of questions and tell you what you should do, and that's usually enough. But you can book a second one if you want. Very few people need a
Okay.
second one. or I have my course, which is my bestseller one. That's what most people come in and get, and that's all they need. And then you also get to be
Yeah.
part of our Facebook group where everyone answers everyone's questions, and it's just invaluable.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's babysleepanswers.com. That's all their stuff there. And
Mhm.
then also Baby Sleep Answers on Instagram. I'm not as
Okay.
intense on it as I used to be because social media is just draining, but I have all my past posts and I do
Yeah.
go on it sometimes on my story. I think it's just kind of like
Yeah.
I never wanted to be a social media influencer and I hated it. And so I'm trying to keep it because I know, I don't really get anything from it besides helping people. So I do put in a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Every time's like, hey, can you please help me with this? But yeah, I don't
Yeah.
answer questions on the DMs because I do get a lot of people that just drop their whole history on my DMs and like tell me what to
Yeah.
do. And I'm usually like, hey, like, please book a consult, then I can actually engage with you and get to know you and tell you what, how to solve your baby's problems. So please don't go to my
Yeah.
Instagram if you just want quick answers because I just can't provide that.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's other baby sleep consultants out there who can, and definitely seek those out if that's what you want. But if you want a comprehensive look at your baby's sleep, especially if you kind of think that you might have a lower sleep needs, because that's my specialty. That's most clients I work with
Yeah.
is figuring out a crazy schedule for their lower sleep
Mhm.
needs baby.
Okay. That's perfect. We will put the links in the show notes for all of that, of course. Last question does not have to be related to anything that we just talked about, but I like to ask everyone at the end, what is something in your life that's just sparking a ton of joy for you right now?
Yeah, honestly, my kids' ages are so fun. They're 4, 6, and 8. And just watching the 3 of them play together is just the best thing in the world. I did not like babyhood. I did not like toddlerhood all that much. I didn't like not sleeping, but now we're all sleeping, we go camping. I'm loving this time. And then obviously again, I'm super into my my master's program. I'm going to start my internship at a trauma center in a couple of
Okay.
weeks. So I'm just filled with excitement for that and also a little bit of dread.
Yeah, I bet. Well, good luck with that. It's not the same, but I remember nursing in different nursing school and getting to go to different centers and hospitals and environments. And they all ask something really different of you while you're learning whatever it is you're learning when you see different
cool.
populations and stuff. So I hope that you love it. And I'm sure that it will be also really equally hard as well. So thank you for your time today. I know you are busy. I know your brain is tired.
It is very tired. I can't do
And
24 minus 8.
and I just appreciate you. I've always loved your approach on Instagram. I feel like you're honest and funny and blunt, but really kind. And it's a nice thing to see in the sleep world. So good to
Thank
talk
you.
to you.
Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome. Thanks, Andrea.
Of course.
Thank you so much for listening to the Lo and Behold podcast. I hope there was something for you in today's episode that made you think, made you laugh, or made you feel seen. For show notes and links to the resources, freebies, or discount codes mentioned in this episode, please head over to loandbeholdpodcast.com. If you aren't following along yet, make sure to tap subscribe or follow in your podcast app so we can keep hanging out together. And if you haven't heard it yet today, you're doing a really good job. A little reminder for you before you go. Opinions shared by guests of this show are their own and do not always reflect those of myself and the Labor Mama platform. Additionally, the information you hear on this podcast or that you receive via any linked resources should not be considered medical advice. Please see our full disclaimer at the link in your show notes.